Well, hi, church family. This is a short devotional encouraging you and our prayer group to continue to seek the Lord during this time and to pray. I know a lot of us are probably tired of the quarantine and thinking of getting back to normal. And I actually heard that phrase not that long ago as a group of ministry leaders were talking about getting back to normal. That phrase and one of the things that occurred to me, I know what they meant by that sentiment was to get together and to see things back restored to where we could come together for worship and Bible study. But it also kind of occurred to me that I think God never wants us to be thinking, let's get back to the way things were. I think God is at work right now, and I'm sure many of you or most of you believe that and know that that's true. But God is at work, and when we do gather back together, we're getting close to that, a week and a half away to start to slowly come back. It's not going to be back to normal, and that's a good thing, because God is always at work, even through trials and tribulations. So it made me think of the life of Joseph, and Joseph is a life in the book of Genesis that we know those stories pretty well if you grew up in church. How his brothers were jealous of him as his dad's favorite and sold him into slavery, and then Joseph was falsely accused and thrown into prison, and just bad thing after bad thing seemed to happen to Joseph for a couple of decades of his life. And yet Joseph continued to trust the Lord and to put him first. And as it turned out, God had always been at work, even through the unspeakable injustice and hardship that Joseph went through. And so when Joseph meets his family again as a leader in Egypt, and they expect him to want to see justice done to them, he instead says this. He weeps at seeing his family, and Joseph says to his brothers, this is in Genesis 45, "Come near to me, please." And they came near, and he said, "I am your brother Joseph, whom you sold into Egypt. And do not be distressed or angry with yourselves because you sold me here, for God sent me before you to preserve life. For the famine has been in this land for 2 years, and there are yet 5 more years that there will be neither plowing nor harvest. And God sent me before you to preserve you for a remnant on the earth, and to keep alive for you many survivors. So it was not you who sent me here, but God. He has made me a father to Pharaoh, and lord of his house, and ruler over the land of Egypt." So even in the incredible hardships that Joseph went through, God clearly was at work. And so we believe that. We believe that God is at work right now. Who knows the millions of things that he's doing in the hearts of people as they walk through this, or they have economic trials or physical trials, or just battling loneliness. And so we want to not get back to normal, but we want to pick up with whatever God is doing. And we want to be a church that's ready to receive those who have maybe been created in them a new spiritual hunger or a new desperation that's created an openness to God. And so as we do move back to that, I want us to pray towards those ends, that God will connect us with more and more people who are in need, who have physical needs, who have spiritual needs, and that he will build his kingdom through the hardship of this quarantine season. And so in the end, even later, when Joseph's father Jacob dies, his brothers are still worried that Joseph is gonna, now that dad's dead, is gonna come after them. And Joseph says, "No, what you intended for evil, God intended for good." So we know that God is at work, and we know that people are experiencing all kinds of manifestations of spiritual hunger in this season. Maybe they're lonely, maybe they're scared, maybe they are feeling isolated or fearful or anxious. And those are all cries of the soul that are ultimately only satisfied with God himself. And yet, though spiritual hunger is all around us, we aren't really thinking that much. Most of us as Americans are not really thinking about putting our hope in God alone. Right now, most of the hope is that they'll find a vaccine and that things can get back to normal, or there won't be more cases, or it won't come back in the fall. And of course, those are good things to desire, but that's not where our hope lies. Our hope doesn't lie in those things. If it's not a coronavirus, it'll be something else. There's always things in this world to drive us to our knees and to remember that what we ultimately need is God. So let's pray. Let's just pray that God will use this season to draw many, many people to himself. Let's pray for our leaders, our leaders in government, our leaders in the churches, that we will be able to speak into the season of the deepest needs that people have, that they will come out of this not just healthy and free from coronavirus or back to work, but they will come out of this with a deeper, richer, maybe a new relationship with the Lord. Because whatever happens in this world, any suffering, any trial, natural disaster, illness, all these things, God's promises stand. And his promise is that all things work together for good for those that love him and are called according to his purpose, and that he is always at work in building his kingdom. So join me in praying this week as churches start back and things like that, that many, many more people will begin to seek the Lord and take their anxieties and fears and cast them upon him. If you have prayer requests, or you have other things that are happening in your life that you'd like to have members of our church praying about, please post them to this group. That's what this group is for. And as God speaks to you and answers prayers, or you hear encouraging stories of what God is doing, also post those so that we can rejoice in those things together. So let's continue to seek the Lord together, and I look forward to seeing many of you in the coming weeks. God bless.